You've probably heard about Noah. You've probably heard about the ark. You've probably heard about, various animals in the ark, which is good. But you may or may not know what happened after the flood was over. Yes, they came out of the ark. That's in Genesis 8. But here's Genesis 9 that we're going to think about today, because there's some things that happen in there that you may not be aware of, or maybe you are. So somebody read verses, Genesis 9 is all printed on here. So somebody please read verses 1 through 7.
After Noah and his family came out of the ark, God blessed Noah and his sons, saying to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number and fill the earth. The fear and dread of you will fall on all the beasts of the earth and all the birds in the sky and on every creature that moves along the ground and on all the fish in the sea. They are given into your hands. Everything that lives and moves about you will be food for you. Just as I gave you the green plants, I now give you everything. But you must not eat meat that is lifeblood still in it. And for your lifeblood I will surely demand an accounting. I will demand an accounting for every animal, and from each human being too. I will demand an accounting for the life of another human being. Whoever sheds human blood, by humans shall their blood be shed. For the image of God has God made mankind. And as for you, be fruitful and increase in number, multiply on earth and increase upon it."
Okay, very good. Thank you very, very much. Let's look at that first box there. Verse 1 says, this whole paragraph actually takes place before the kosher and dietary laws that God gave to the Israelites. So up to this time in the Garden of Eden, God said to Adam and Eve, you can eat from all these plants. Now, he says, everything that lives and moves will be food for you, not just the plants. So vegetarianism is right out, okay? It's just, God says you get to eat all these critters. So somewhere in the world, someone is eating something you'd think is gross.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go to Taiwan and stuff, and you look at all the bugs and everything they eat, and people look at it and go, "Oh my God, how can you do that?" They live on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nothing
Because
to
they
them.
put chocolate on it first.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, what was that?
put chocolate on it.
Put chocolate on it? Put it on the grill so it gets crunchy. And, yeah, scorpions on a stick. I mean,
Really?
They do that.
Pull up the tail and go.
Yeah.
Yum, yum.
People eat stuff all over the world
Yeah.
that we wouldn't think to eat.
Really?
And God said, I'm going to give you all this. Now, this is before the kosher laws that applied to the Jewish people, so there's a lot of stuff they were not allowed to eat. But, by and large, after the flood, you get to eat whatever. Okay. It's only after you're 3 years old that you get to. Pam's got a look on her face.
Yeah, I
like,
have a question.
"Ew." Yeah.
No, the "you" is past.
Okay.
In verse 5 it says, "And for your lifeblood I will demand an accounting. I will demand an accounting from every animal." What does that mean? You can eat them, but I'm going to count them against you?
No. Look at where the context is there. You must not eat meat that has its lifeblood still in it.
In other words, it's got to be, you
Good
just
and
can't
dead.
eat it raw.
Yeah.
Cut it and just,
So,
You know.
I mean, he,
there's blood still in it.
Yeah, with the blood still in it. So
Okay.
that's part number 2, or in verse 4 there. It says, removing the blood from the meat is part of the koshering process. Okay, so in the kosher meat plant, there's a really thorough draining and salting of the meat to get all the blood out. Okay, so, but what if anything does this verse say about things like eating extra rare prime rib?
Yeah.
That would be a no-no.
Yeah, that would be a no-no as
Yeah.
far as this is concerned.
Okay.
What
Right.
about
Okay.
stuff like blutwurst or
Yeah.
kishka, blood sausage, in other words? No.
That's disgusting anyway.
Disgusting. Well, it is, but a lot of cultures you eat that.
Yeah.
I
You
know.
gotta be careful and go to Poland if they say, who stole the kishka?
That's a stretch.
Okay, so when it says I will demand an accounting from every animal, that means you better make sure there's no blood in it when you eat it. It's got to be,
Make sure there's no blood in it when you eat it,
Okay. okay.
so. there's a phrase in, I don't know, from England somewhere, it talks the nature red in tooth and claw. It's like, I think God's natural. This is a law of nature, right? Eventually, the lion will get eaten by another lion. Or if not by another lion, then at least by the buzzards. So every predator will become the prey eventually.
Yeah.
But
So is verse 6 where capital punishment came in?
well, yes. It's throughout the rest of the books of Moses. If somebody does this, then stone him. If somebody does that, then shoot him with arrows. Yeah. And if this murder happens, then yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, we'll let you think about that.
No,
Okay.
that's what he said.
Yep. All right, let's move on. Somebody read 8 through 17, please.
Then God said to Noah and to his sons with him, I now establish my covenant with you and with your descendants after you, and with every living creature that was with you, the birds, the livestock, and all the wild animals, all those that came out of the ark with you, every living creature on earth. I establish my covenant with you. Never again will all life be destroyed by the waters of the flood. Never again will there be a flood to destroy the earth. Do I keep going?
Keep going, the rest of that
Oh.
paragraph, please. Yeah.
Where do I end?
17.
It's the end of the
17.
paragraph.
At the
way down
break.
there. And God said, this is a sign of the covenant I am making between me and you and every living creature with you, a covenant for all generations to come. I have set my rainbow in the clouds, and it will be the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Whenever I bring clouds over the earth, and the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will remember my covenant between me and you and all living creatures of every kind. Never again will the waters become a flood to destroy all life. Whenever the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and all living creatures of every kind on the earth. So God said to Noah, this is a sign of the covenant I have established between me and all life on earth.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. So let's talk about this rainbow. Okay, and in the box there, the question that started is this: which is greater, the logo or the sign? Sometimes when it says a sign in the Bible, think logo. Okay, which is greater, the logo or the covenant it represents? Which is greater, a logo like, say, the Nike
covenant.
logo, or the company
I
and
think
the
the
product it
covenant mentioned
represents?
about 10
Covenant.
times.
The covenant.
The
Yeah.
covenant is
Yes.
more important.
Yeah.
Okay. In fact, Jesus says this. He's teaching the Pharisees and whatnot, and he comes to a point where he says, you can swear by the altar, but don't swear by the gift that you put on the altar. And that's what they were teaching. If you're gonna make an oath, swear by the altar, but not by the gift on the altar. And Jesus is like, which is greater? Which is more sacred? Is the gift more sacred, or is it the altar that makes the gift sacred? So he says, so don't swear by the altar at all. In fact, he says, don't swear by anything at all. But, okay. So what is it that gives the power to the gift? It's the sacred altar. What is it that gives the power to the sign of the covenant? It's the covenant itself. Okay. So what is it that makes the rainbow, that gives the rainbow its importance in this passage?
It's a reminder.
Of what?
His covenant.
God's
His covenant. Okay,
Promise,
it's the
yeah.
covenant behind the rainbow that he will never destroy the earth with a flood like this ever again. Okay. Now, here's what happens. As with every logo, or it gets misappropriated or twisted or used for something completely different. Okay. And to tell you the truth, my favorite example of this is League baseball team in Washington DC that has that big W on their hats, and I always look at that big W and say, that's Walgreens. It just looks very similar. I said, no, it's not, because there's this little, Okay. So let's think about the rainbow for a little bit here. Just because of current events and the month that we happen to be in terms of the popular calendar, or so-called popular calendar. So here's a question about this whole rainbow issue. Is God partly to blame for the way people misappropriate the rainbow because he never bothered to register it with the patent office and trademark?
He didn't copyright it.
He didn't copyright it. He didn't register it with the trademark. So he has no cause to complain if people use the rainbow for any other purpose.
Is that what you're saying is fact?
Clouds.
What was this?
What reminds God, though, is his rainbow in the clouds,
That's right.
not the ones that
Right,
are
Right.
that people use.
Yeah.
waving around.
Plus
Yeah.
patent office wasn't around then.
Yeah, when they,
I'm sorry?
Patent office wasn't around
Patent
then.
office wasn't around.
yeah.
He's the original patent.
Yeah, but, you know,
00001.
his trademark expired, so people can use it for whatever they want to. And they often do. I frequently see things on Facebook about, the rainbow. God wanted us to use it, or whatever. And it's
No, he didn't.
So,
He wanted us to remember what the rainbow stood for.
he wanted us to remember what the rainbow stood for. That's exactly right. And as far as God is concerned, as Tom said, what the rainbow stands for is he will not flood the earth again like he did in the days of Noah.
I don't know, could use a good washing, though.
Well, that might be true, but
It was interesting to me on verse 17 that he says, I have established between me and all life on the earth.
mhm,
It wasn't just for people.
Wasn't
It
just
was
for
all
people.
the animals.
all-
Yeah. So he's saving those snakes too.
Yeah. And the mice.
And the muskrats, and the ground dogs.
and those scorpions.
And the
that are in
scorpions.
Thailand,
And the
so,
moles.
Yeah.
And those little no-see-ums that get you every summer.
The reason for
yeah.
that.
Midges at baseball games, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He could have taken care of the mosquitoes, though.
Yes.
Go ahead, Pam.
Can I go back to the first part, the first section?
I knew it was gonna bug you eventually. too.
No, it wasn't the rest of that. The part that I'm asking about is verse 2. The fear and dread of you will fall on all the beasts of the earth and all the birds of the sky and every creature. So before then, because they were not eating animals, the animals weren't afraid of them? Would you?
Presumably,
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
presumably.
And now that they're food, they'll be afraid of
Yeah.
people.
Fear for their
Because,
lives. Fear for their lives.
so human beings before this were caretakers and caregivers of all life. And now with this, they move to being apex predators,
Yeah.
okay? And so all animals become then afraid of human beings in one way or another.
Yeah, that was something. There's stuff in here I know I've read
Mhm,
more than once, but I just didn't get it.
mhm.
Well, you figure why they were on the ark, there was only 2 of everything, so you couldn't eat them
Yeah.
Right.
without having them go into extinction.
Mhm.
Yeah, but the other thing is, the other aspect of it is sometimes, when you think about it, how long did it take before everything was repopulated? I mean, if you only have 2 animals,
Well, rabbits would take over really fast.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying, it's like, how long did everything,
Yeah,
really take
Especially
before
those
to
that
the
only have
point?
one baby.
yeah, elephants.
Right, yeah.
They'd have a hard time.
Well,
Yeah.
they were on that ark sealed up for almost 2 years. Okay, I mean, the rain came down and then it took a long time for it to dry up. So all all total, they were on the ark for almost 2 years. So,
There were babies coming off.
well,
Yeah.
you know, the animals, they came out by threesies.
Threes and fours and
They
fives.
had learned their birds and beesies.
Exactly, yeah.
I know, I love, that's a good song.
Yes. Well. And that's why they walk around the ship, stop it, no, stop it.
Only two.
Yeah. So many funny stories in the name.
Stop, I'm gonna separate you.
Exactly. That's why you had 3 decks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, there's stuff, you just kind of ponder about the implications of what it says.
Oh, yeah.
All right, speaking of implications, let's go on. Somebody read verses 18 and 19, please.
The sons of Noah who came out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. These were the 3 sons of Noah, and from them came the people who were scattered over the whole earth.
Okay, we're going to talk about, don't flip the page yet. We're going to talk about Canaan in a little bit, but there's a reason, a biblical reason why he's mentioned here. But I wanted to put this note in that I knew I could find it on Wikipedia, but Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and here's the note from Wikipedia. In medieval ethnography, that's the classification of people groups, the world was believed to have been divided into 3 large-scale groupings corresponding to the 3 classical continents: the Semitic peoples of Asia, the Hamitic peoples of Africa, and the Japhetic peoples of Europe. And I've said these days this is a problematic arrangement on so many levels. So in the Middle Ages, they only knew what we call the Middle East, Africa, and Europe. They didn't know about China because Marco Polo hadn't quite got there yet. Okay, and they didn't know about the Western Hemisphere, all right, because Columbus hadn't got here yet. Okay, so they had basically 3 continents to work with, what we call the Middle East, or Asia Minor, Asia, Africa, and the people of Europe. And so the idea was in the Middle Ages, up until through the Middle Ages, well, if Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and all the world was descended from them, how did that end up? And by that time they said, well, the Shemites or the Semites are the people in the Middle East, the Jews and the Arabs and others. The Hamites are people in Africa, and the Japhethites are the Europeans. And it seemed reasonable at the time, and these days, that is, oh my gosh. I think there are probably still people who follow that, but it's not, it's totally not PC at all. And it's not even not PC, it's not even biblical. Okay. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's turn the page. And this is the part that we never hear in Sunday school. Although I did read this week, somebody said, I don't know why we don't learn in Sunday school except that it's PG. So somebody start reading, please.
Noah, a man of the soil, proceeded to plant a vineyard. When he drank some of its wine, he became drunk and lay uncovered inside his tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father naked and told his 2 brothers aside. But Shem and Japheth took the garment and laid it across their shoulders. Then they walked in backward and covered their father's naked body. Their faces were turned the other way so that they would not see their father naked. When Noah awoke from his wine and found out what his youngest son had done to him, he said, "Cursed be Canaan, the lowest of slaves will he beat his brothers." He also said, "Praise to the Lord, the God of Shem. May Canaan be the slave of Shem. May God extend Japheth's territory. May Japheth live in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be the slave of Japheth." After the flood, Noah lived 350 years. Noah lived a total of 950 years, and then he died.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. I'm not sure I'd want to live to 950 years.
Really, I can imagine Social Security then.
I think you have to worry about it.
You'd have to
Only
work
you,
until you're
I don't know.
800.
Yeah.
95 might be as far, a tenth of that would be good enough. All right, so there's several things to talk about here, and this is what I want to do. First of all, and I'm just going to say this right now, there's always a bit of a puzzlement as to why Noah skipped a generation and cursed Canaan. So because of what his son Ham did, Noah wakes up and curses his grandson. It's like, wait a minute, what the curse? So he skipped a generation on the curse. I don't know what that's all about, but we'll get to that in a little bit. It's a little bit puzzling as to why he's cursing the grandson and not the son who actually embarrassed him. Okay, but what I want to do is use the verse below to talk about several other issues, and then we'll get to Canaan eventually, okay? So Noah was the first man mentioned in the Bible that got drunk. It doesn't, I'm not saying he was the first one that got drunk, he was the first one that's mentioned that got drunk. So I think we can talk about some of these other issues. So the first one, with regard to Ham and what he did, the fourth commandment is honor your father and mother. And so we're all good old-time Lutherans, most of us. We can read this, what does this mean together? We should fear and love God so that we do not despise or anger our parents and other authorities, but honor them, serve and obey them, love and cherish them. Now, granted, this episode with Noah happened well before the commandments were given. Okay, so can we fault Ham for not obeying the commandment? I don't know, but these days anymore, we have this commandment, okay, that's still around. What does this have to do with the whole issue of things like social media and shaming people, which is what Ham basically did? He was the first social media shamer, right? He went out and told his brothers that he saw their father in a shameful position.
So it's not so much that he saw him drunk, it's that he
Shared
he
it.
shared that info.
Yeah,
I mean, okay.
yeah, I mean, that's part of
I
it,
think-
yes,
right.
that's the first issue.
Nor did he take care of it.
Right, okay.
He didn't
Yeah,
take care of
right,
it.
Right.
He didn't handle it,
He could have done that
He could have.
without even telling
Right.
his brothers,
right,
and he
Right.
chose not to. He chose to go out and tell them.
right,
Mm-hmm.
right.
Now, was he the youngest?
I don't know.
Oh, because you could think maybe, maybe he was just shocked and like,
Yeah.
You know,
What do
I
I
don't
do?
know
What
the
do I
answer to
do?
that. It's always Shem, Ham, and Japheth.
So it
And I
sounds
don't
like
know
he's
if
the
it's-
middle child.
yeah, or the oldest.
You
Yeah,
know, they're always
24.
listed as Shem, Ham, and Japheth.
But this is kind of what his youngest son had done to him, is that?
Oh, okay, verse 24, okay,
His
so
youngest
maybe he
son.
was,
Yeah,
Yeah.
Maybe
yeah,
he
was.
youngest son.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So maybe he was, that's not something you probably see every day. He might have been.
But he was a man.
Yeah, but you always get the impression, I mean, there's this lasting impression, and it doesn't say this in this thing. It doesn't say Ham went out and told his brothers, oh my gosh, Dad is naked, I don't know what to do.
Yeah,
It sounds more like the whole response issue was he was actually, that's what that,
oh,
you know, it's that kind of stuff. I mean,
gotcha.
it doesn't say that exactly, but that's always the impression that I've had, and even from commentators, that Ham was making fun of his father, to the brothers, which, yes, he should not have been doing. Yes, he should have tried to take care of it himself, I mean, why didn't he go with the blanket and cover him up? I don't know. Why did he feel it necessary to spread this shameful incident even to the family? Which then brings us to the whole shaming deal and whether it's social media or not. Why do we seem to feel that, why do people in general seem to feel that we should, spread the dirt about other people, even to members of their family? Why can't we just keep it to ourselves when we know something shameful about somebody?
Because it elevates us. I mean.
Okay, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if I'm the one that's doing the shaming to John Doe, I'm saying I am better because John Doe has done this, and this, and this.
Mhm.
So it does elevate me, at least in my mind, and hopefully trying to tell the others, see, I'm better, you're better, we're better, but at least me, anyway.
And getting a
Trying
lot
to
of
keep a
attention.
secret.
Well-
Just somebody to try and keep a secret. with
Well, that's true too, yeah.
Go ahead, Pam, you started it.
And it brings, you get attention.
Mhm.
Not only are you not saying, but saying I'm better, you get a lot of attention.
Right.
That's the devil.
It's the devil.
Well, and if he's the youngest son, he probably has to do something to stand out
Mm.
from the older brothers.
Well, that might be true too. Yeah. Yeah. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, you don't know. On the ark, he might have been a slave to everybody. Here, do this, go do this, do this, you know? Hard to say.
Go to the bottom of the boat and clean.
Yeah, right. Yeah. This is your job, buddy.
I think they all worked in the boat.
I'm sure they all
This
did,
is
but
something
still,
different.
you know, a lot of times the youngest brother is always the one who gets picked on the most,
Yeah.
you know?
But these are all men. They're all men, and they have
Even if they're
and they're
young.
married. I mean,
Still,
this is a
doesn't
different.
matter. Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
You can be 80 years old, you got it, yeah, you're the youngest, you take care of it. It's like,
It's one of the historical rules of plumbing. It all goes downhill.
yeah, right.
And you know, when he saw his father like that, he had to know that something wasn't right. So he should have, if he would have just covered him, he knew, don't you
Yeah.
think?
He could have just covered it.
Yeah.
And how it was that Noah, figured this out, I don't know, but he says when he awoke and found out what his youngest son was. So somehow, it wasn't just a matter of waking up. It was a matter of.
Somebody ratted him
Somebody
out.
told him.
Somebody ratted him out.
Brothers
Right.
ratted him out.
Brothers, the brothers might have been talking about it.
Yeah.
You know, and the other question I have when someone read this is like, if Noah lived to be 950 years old, did he have any other kids?
Well, God said be.
Yeah.
He told
Yeah,
him be fruitful
But I'm
right
just
here.
saying, did he have any other kids? You know?
And the answer is quite possible.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know.
There are some, I didn't read this very thoroughly on Wikipedia, but there are apparently some traditions from outside the Bible that said Noah had other sons and
Yeah,
daughters.
so those kids could have started a civilization somewhere else too, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Instead of
the
just saying,
Americas.
those three boys, that's it. The world revolved
Well,
around them.
God blessed Noah and his sons, saying to them, "Be fruitful and increase."
Right, yeah, so,
Yeah, he could well have had it. I mean, it's not impossible.
no,
His wife's going, no.
yeah.
I think it's probable because of the way it's written
I
in
think
the
it's
Bible.
probable.
I'm 457 years old. How many kids do you want me to have?
Be fruitful.
Keep on popping them out. Replenishing the earth, so.
I mean,
How many different tribes are we gonna put in the Americas?
right, yeah.
All right, let's go on to the next little bit there, because so part of it was the shame. Oh, I know what I was gonna say, was in terms of the shaming in the social media. Sometimes we do watch murder mysteries. We like to watch Father Brown and Blue Bloods and things like that. And sometimes you get a character that's a Catholic priest. And it's kind of interesting to hear the way Catholic priests do with what they do with shameful information about a person. Sometimes somebody says, I know a bit of shameful information about so-and-so, so I'm going to put it on social media, I'm going to broadcast it, I'm going to say, I have a secret about that guy, and see if you can worm it out of me. I like to see you try. Okay, I'll tell you. But often when you get the Catholic priests on there, they'll be like, I'm bound by the seal of the confessional. And then the person who's asking will say, then that person did come to you and tell you something shameful. And the priest will sometimes say, I can't even tell you whether he came or not, because it's the seal of the confessional. So it's like, it gets to be a real interesting dynamic. So the priest is It's like, I'm not able to either affirm or deny that the person even told me that. I cannot tell you that, literally. Is it because you don't know? I can't tell you why. It's just, that's the way the confessional works. Okay. Unfortunately, not too many other people are bound by the seal of the confessionals. All right, let's go to the next one. Because this commandment is also part of it. Living a chaste and decent life. Let's read the sixth commandment. You shall not commit adultery. And what does this mean? Let's read this together. We should fear and love God,
so that we lead a sexually pure and decent life in what we say and do, and husband and wife love and honor each other.
So in the old days, we used to say that we live a chaste and decent life. Okay? And we now have, I'm thinking of this because we now have this document in the Missouri Synod from the Commission on Theology and Church Relations that's called A Chaste and Decent Life. And it's a study of human sexuality. Now, we had a similar document back in the 80s, and our Commission on Theology and Church Relations was asked to update it. And so in this updated document, they've said, we don't see any reason to say anything different than what we said in 1980, except that we need to say we need to exercise a lot of compassion and grace with people who are struggling with sexual issues. We shouldn't be condemning them out of hand, but we need to exercise a lot of grace. But on the other hand, the whole issue is about chaste and decent life. How do we handle, all of these various issues, including an issue like this one? What do we do when the younger brother says, Dad's laying in the tent naked? Do we go in there and gawk and say, ooh, this is ammunition we could use for later on, and et cetera, et cetera?
Or do we do exactly what the other brothers did?
And what exactly was it that Shem and Japheth did?
They covered him without looking themselves.
They covered him without looking themselves, right? They put it on and backed into it so that they could honestly and literally say, Dad, we didn't see anything. Okay. Yeah, we went in and looked for ourselves, and he was right. No, we didn't see anything. And maybe that's part of what it is to live a sexually pure and decent life, I guess. That leads us to the next one in there, and this verse is from 1 Peter. Love covers a multitude of sins, right? And literally, isn't that what they did? They covered up their father, right? So let's read the 8th commandment. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. What's that mean? Let's read this together.
We should fear and love God, so that we do not tell lies about our neighbor, betray him, slander him, or hurt his reputation, but defend him, speak well of him, and explain everything in the kindest way.
Okay, so how does this one come into play? Did Ham actually tell a lie about their father? No.
No, but he betrayed him from the standpoint.
In what way?
In telling his brothers about it and not taking care of covering himself.
Right. And so that was a betrayal. That was also, I like this phrase here that is there, about explaining everything in the kindest way.
Yeah.
And not hurting their reputation. So often, people are like, oh, I'm not bearing false witness because I have it on good authority. I saw it myself and so forth. I know it's going to ruin that guy's reputation, but it's the truth. And maybe there are some times, does this commandment say maybe there are some times when we say to somebody, I am not going to tell you the truth that I know because it would hurt their reputation. Of course, you don't even have to say because it would hurt their reputation, but if you have that in mind. I am not going to tell you the truth that you think I know. And of course, Shem and Japheth literally covered their father.
Which was really a that's a very loving thing to do, I mean,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and in the way they did it.
Mm-hmm.
So this was the beginning of pornography?
Well, I mean,
I mean, it's funny, but it's not funny. This is,
it's funny, it's not funny, yeah.
I
this
don't
is what
think so.
people do.
I don't think so.
You think it started earlier, before the flood?
That's why they got flooded.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Right.
there's that, that's why I
Yep.
got flooded. You know, actually, there was one, I'm gonna tell you this one, because I thought it was hilarious. But the Babylon Bee is a satiric, website about Christianity, and they had one not too long ago, and they're always news headlines, and the headline not too long ago was, a study funded by Michael and the Archangels discovered that 100% of human males would eat an apple offered to them by a naked woman.
It's human nature.
Yeah.
It's human nature.
Yep.
It kind of is human nature.
Yep. God knew what he was doing.
I think you know what, Pam, I'm gonna say, I think you kind of caught me out of the blue on that one. I don't want to get into a digression on pornography that I'm not prepared to get into.
However, in 2 weeks, you'll have a 7-page report.
Yes.
No, but in about 2 hours, I'll send you the link to the CTCR document on Chasing Decent Life. I think there's a section on pornography there. But I think basically the idea would be that there is a way in which, in these days, and, you know, even in those days, in which we have I don't want to say it, we have pushed human sexuality into a mold, a format, whatever you want to say it, that God did not really intend. Okay. And that is as a result of sin. So maybe, you know, the start of pornography was, you know, when the devil said, you'll be like God's knowing good and evil if you eat this, so go ahead and eat it. You know, this is just one of those things. I would like to spend at least a few minutes talking about this, Noah's curse. You know, when Noah found out what his youngest son Ham had done, he cursed Ham's son. He didn't curse Ham. He jumped a generation and cursed Canaan, who was Ham's son. Okay, and so I think it would be a good idea that we should think about the generational and ethnic effects that this curse seems to have had. Whether it's directly from the curse or whether it's because some people have absolutely misunderstood the whole point of the Bible. So I think that the first one says it was not only the command of God in Joshua 6 and other places in Joshua, but a sense, maybe in the Israelites, that the Canaanites, and you know, Canaan was the son of Ham, but Canaanite was also the general term for all the various tribes that were living in the promised land when they got there, right? The Hittites, the Jebusites, the Perizzites, the Amorites, all those guys. The Canaanites. And I think there was a sense, probably, among the Israelites that the Canaanites deserved what they got when God said, you go into the promised land and you'll wipe out those Canaanites. You just completely obliterate them. And there was always this sense that part of it was God said, I don't want to have any competition from the gods of the Canaanites. So when you go there, you do what you did to Jericho. You totally destroy the thing, kill every living thing in it, animal, vegetable, mineral, and people. And so there's this sense that if you bump it back to the time of Noah, it's not just the command of God, but the Canaanites deserved this because that was Noah's curse. Okay? Now whether you buy that or not, I think that was part of the Israelite motivation. Some of it was God said wipe them out, and the others like, oh yeah, well they're Canaanites. They were cursed from the get-go, right after the flood.
But they didn't do it.
But they were the descendants thereof, So
No, I mean the Israelites didn't do it.
No, they didn't do it.
follow the directions.
No,
even
they
if
didn't
they
follow the
thought,
directions.
even if they
No,
thought
they
they
didn't.
deserved it, they didn't follow the directions.
No, they didn't. They didn't. And even if it was just God commanded you to wipe out the Canaanites, they still didn't do that either.
Yeah.
But I think that there was always this additional thing that could have been a motivation to some of them anyway to say they're Canaanites, they deserve it, because Moses cursed them. Okay, so that could have led some of them to say, if they're getting opposition, why are we killing these poor innocent Canaanites? Well, they're not innocent. Why? Because they're Canaanites. They're under the curse. We got to follow that. And I'm not anyway. So I think there was part of that, but I do know that by the time you get to the Middle Ages, that the second one says, throughout the centuries, the idea that the descendants of Ham and his son Canaan were mostly Africans, okay, Canaanites in the Promised Land, but they're mostly Africans, gave the so-called biblical justification not only to the enslavement of Africans by other cultures, but to the notion that their skin coloring was part of the inherited curse. Okay, and Wikipedia said the Hamites were identified as the Africans in terms of a general continental kind of thing, and I have heard that before. They had a dark skin coloring because that's the color of the demons in hell also. So there was this so-called biblical justification for centuries that said, these people are under the curse. They're doomed to be slaves. The curse of enslavement came from the time of Noah. From the time of Noah, we knew that people from Africa were going to be slaves. So we're just doing God's will and putting them in boats and bringing them over here and all that other stuff. My note is this attitude may possibly still be found here and there in the world, but it's absolutely not justified by these verses. The whole idea of enslaving people just because Noah said, I'm that Canaan anyway, is just a horrible idea. It's just abhorrent. And yet, that motivated people for centuries. Oh, well, they're Africans. They're supposed to be slaves. So, and that's just wrong.
Yeah, by the time the Middle Ages came around, there was the New Testament, and that negated all that anyway.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people choose from the Bible what they want.
Well,
Right.
yeah,
That's
yes
the
and no.
biblical justification.
Yes and no. There isn't anything specifically in the Bible that says slavery is wrong. Okay, St. Paul says, because under Christ there's no distinction between slave and free, Greek and Roman and all that other stuff. That's the only statement there, but he writes in other places about people who are slaves and doesn't say it's wrong. In fact, he uses the same word of himself. He said, we use the word, I'm a servant of Jesus Christ, but it really means a slave. It's not until several hundred years later when St. Patrick comes along, who had been a slave, who is really the first Christian to say slavery is wrong. And yet, he gets ignored for hundreds of years by people who are way more interested in the wealth of Africa than in the people of Africa.
Yeah.
And that's still the case these days.
Sure is.
Yeah,
Yeah, sooner or later, the money issue always takes
Yeah.
over.
yeah,
And the other thing is, I look at this and it goes, you know, when Noah said that, cursed be Canaan, he didn't say, you know, cursed be all of his, you know, everything. It just
Right.
says cursed be Canaan. That's
Right.
it.
right.
So, you know, sometimes you look at that and go, so why did everybody else have to be cursed too? You know? So sometimes I look at it and go, okay, so maybe Canaan was cursed and he became the evil person and just started manipulating everything else, you know, the culture and everything. You know,
Well,
it's hard
and
to say.
That might be true too.
Yeah,
I mean,
you
he
know.
might have taken it on the chin and said, "This is horrible," and I'm
Yeah.
gonna just do it, and then everybody
Yeah.
was like that.
Yeah,
That seems to be the case with some other people in the Bible when that
Yeah.
happens. Excuse me, but there is a sense in which, if you look at the whole history and sequence of blessings and curses throughout the Old Testament, that those words have a power that carries on for generations.
Yeah.
And without saying that they're necessarily magic words, but those words carry down through the generations. Whether it's a blessing word or a cursing word, you know, later on there's people who are doing things and they're like, why would they be doing that? It's because they've been taught that that's what it's like. This is what we do. I mean, we did the same thing. This is what we do in our family, guys, right?
yeah.
This is the way our family
Yeah.
works.
Generation after generation,
Generation
doesn't
after
matter. Yeah.
generation. And we've done this for 100 years, so we're gonna continue to do it, whether you want to or not, because this is what we do in our family.
Tradition.
And those days, everything was tradition.
Yeah,
Everything was based on tradition. So,
yeah. So,
There's just an interesting little note in my Bible here about, the curse of Canaan. And it says that, it shouldn't be used to justify enslavement of blacks because Canaan was Caucasian.
because Canaan was Caucasian.
That's
Yeah,
what.
so
that's
how
what
do
the-
they know
I
that?
don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
That's what
you know,
it says.
how do they know
I
that?
don't know, but it was just like, oh my.
dug
Yeah.
them up and said, yep,
I
either way.
don't know. I just
Right
read that.
now.
I was like, okay.
I hate to say this, but I was looking up Noah the other day,
Yeah.
and I stumbled upon the website of the Ark Encounter, okay, the thing in Kentucky, and it's like, okay, so Noah's sons, and, and the way they phrased it was very instructive, okay? The website says, we don't know anything much about except their names. So for the purposes of our display, we have decided that we would say that Shem was a man of the soil and was the farmer, and Japheth was a man of construction and was the guy that would have built, and he inherited his father's gift for construction. And I'm like, but you don't know.
Right,
You built this whole segment based on just wild guesses.
yeah.
Well,
And I think that sometimes that's what we do generally, is we
Right.
build a whole discussion on things that we just don't know anything about.
exactly.
Wild guesses. But I think we do need to say, and I do need to clearly say, that that this is not a justification for all the abuses of slavery through the centuries. It's just not. And I think that, you talk about people being accountable for the spilling of blood. I think that there's a lot of people that, are facing the accountability, if they haven't already faced the accountability of God for spilling the human blood that they have over the years because of slavery. And still are. So,
Yeah, but slavery's been around since time began.
and it's still around.
It's still, yeah,
It's
it'll
still-
never go away. It'll never go
Yeah.
away.
All right, everybody. Thank you. We're about out of time. You didn't know there was all of this in the story of Noah, did you? You knew there was some of it, but I don't know. So thank you very much. We'll see what happens next week. We'll have to do something really scandalous when Pam isn't here, so that Tom will have something exciting to report. Boy, you should have heard what.
No, I'll just tell her, go on YouTube.
Go on YouTube. I gotta be careful with how I put this on YouTube, you know, because they like,
Yeah.
I have to put on YouTube, no, this is not made for kids. I do that most of the time. All right, thank you, everybody. Let's have a prayer. Father, we thank you for your goodness and your love and your grace for us all the time, especially the grace that you give us in the forgiveness of sins. We thank you that even though whatever it was going on with Noah, you still gave him your grace and forgave his sins, and those of Shem and Ham and Japheth too. Continue to bless us and watch over us, not only with that forgiveness, but with that love, so that we may deal with one another in love and the people around us in love and gentleness and care, like Shem and Japheth did. Please watch over all our families. Please watch over all our friends. Please watch over all of us in all that we do with you and for you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you, everybody.
Yep.